This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. East Texas is known for its tall pines, country charm, and communities where everybody knows everybody. The kind of place where people wave from their porches, secrets take root, and news travels faster than a summer storm. And in summer of 2006, something spread through the pine-swathed streets of Tyler and Longview that no one could explain. A disappearance that left behind no witnesses, no final phone call, and no trace, except for a purse, a car, and a gas can. This is the story of Brandy Wells, a 23-year-old college student, a country music dreamer, a flag corps twirler, and a daughter of East Texas whose last night out turned into the kind of mystery that keeps every parent up at night. Hi, guys. Hello, hello, Death by Southwest listeners. Welcome to episode, I think we're on 113 now. Wow. And gosh, it's really hard for me I didn't do any bonus last week and maybe not the week before. I can't totally remember. And again, if you're a new listener, bonus episodes generally consist of me just kind of shooting the shit and catching up on my life or talking about whatever's interesting me that week. And I haven't done that in a minute or two. So I feel like I have a lot to catch up on with you guys. I also haven't done one on Patreon. I usually do at least one on a week that's just Patreon, and I haven't for I think 2 weeks. It was my birthday this past weekend, which is not a really good excuse for anything, actually. But yeah, I've the past 2 weeks have been a bit of an emotional roller coaster, but I feel like I say that a lot. Isn't that kind of just life? Maybe it's just my life. Maybe it's not everybody's life. Or maybe it's life in your 40s. I don't know. Anyways, here we are. I'm not going to jump into any of my life beyond what I just did because Tuesday is true crime only. So we're going to jump right into this story. And we are going to do a little bit of a sense of place. Now, I know last week's episode I feel like the intro was very similar, like small town in Texas. Last week it was Lubbock, though. So not the same town, but town in Texas nonetheless. And today's story kind of features more, it takes place over a couple of towns that are all closely related. So we're going to do a brief sense of place on each of these just to give you a little bit of kind of a little bit of a sense of place about where we're going. So if you've never been to East Texas, it's it's a vibe. It's we're going to today be talking about a triangular cluster of towns, Longview, Tyler, and Brownsboro. Each kind of has their own little personality and charm, and they all share something, which is that kind of unsettling feeling that everyone knows everyone else's business because they kind of do. Which personally, no one asked, but I love a small town. I've not ever lived, the smallest town I've lived in was Flagstaff here in Arizona, in northern Arizona, and it's not that small. I would love to live in like a small town where you know everyone. I think I would. I never have, but I think I would. So why are we covering these three towns? Brownsboro is primarily, for most of this story, where Brandy lived. Tyler is where her family lived and where she spent a small part of this story. And Longview is where she went out one night. So that's where she spent another small part of this story and where she was last seen. So that's why we're covering all three. So let's start with Tyler, Texas, where her family lived, and where she pretty much grew up. Its nickname is the Rose Capital of America. So Tyler's kind of like the polished older sister of East Texas towns. It's a little bit refined, flower obsessed, hence the nickname, and very, very proud of its rose garden. Again, hence the nickname. It's home to the largest municipal rose garden in the country, the Texas Rose Festival, and if you're into this kind of thing, lots and lots of Bible colleges, which means that you can kind of like smell the fresh bloom of roses and a little bit of guilt in the air when you're walking down the street. The downtown area is a mix of Southern charm and slightly haunted historical buildings. And the city itself sits at the intersection of wholesome family values and the occasional super shocking news story that makes you say, "What?" It's all very kind of East Texas church potluck meets True Detective. So that's Tyler, Texas. And now, and did I say the population? About 110,000. So that's going to be the biggest of the three East Texas towns that we refer to today. The next is Longview, Texas, which is about 82,000 population. And the vibe is kind of like if a truck stop, a high school football stadium, and a Waffle House had a baby. It's located about 40 minutes east of Tyler, a little grittier, a little rougher around the edges, probably more likely than Tyler to be the setting for like a Dateline episode. Um, Friday night football is religion here, which is not shocking because from what I know of Texas, that's kind of like everywhere in Texas. Uh, People are pretty friendly until you do something to piss them off, and then they're not. It's known for railroads, pine trees, and the energy has been described as kind of like, "Oh, you're not from around here, are you?" type of energy. Surprising amount of, maybe it's not surprising because I've said this already about Tyler, lots of churches, lots of pawn shops. You can get a good chicken fried steak and a gun like right next door to each other in the same strip mall. And it's so Longview's also where the club that Brandy went to, which obviously we'll get into in the story, was last seen. It's called Graham Central Station, which I have to assume is a play on Grand Central Station, but I actually didn't look that up. So it was the place to go if you were like in your 20s, 30s, and felt like line dancing and potentially making questionable decisions. And then Brownsboro is just under 1,200 people, the population. So this is the kind of like blink and you'll miss it type town. It's a very tiny town nestled between Tyler and Chandler. It's more of like a wide spot on the road, side of the road, rather than like an actual destination. Lots of pastures, tractors, American flags on every porch. Everyone knows everyone's not only like name, but like middle name, blood type, and all of their business. It's small town Texas in the purest form. Feels safe, church heavy, of course, and like sipping sweet tea on your front porch type life. And East Texas overall, which maybe I should have started with, but I didn't. So it is part of Texas that is can be very humid, lots of pine trees, and just in general described as kind of like a stubborn place. The air is a mix, the smell in the air is a mix of like fried food, cut grass, and transmission fluid. You will hear southern drawls. You will see lots of big American trucks. And it feels like time moves just a little bit slower in East Texas. So hopefully that gives you kind of an overall sense of where this story takes place today. And if you're from any of these places or you're from East Texas and I got it totally wrong, definitely let me know. I haven't been to a lot of the places that we talk. I've been to a lot of them, but I've also not been to a lot of them. So I'm always open to being corrected and somebody saying like, no, that's not the vibe at all. You're totally off because I do believe you can't really get the actual vibe of it. And I'm sorry to use that annoying word so many times, but you can't get the actual like feel of a place, I think, until you go there. So I'm going based off of pictures, videos, research online. So apologies if I happened to get it wrong. Okay, let's jump in. and get to know Brandy Ellen Wells, who was born November 28th, 1982, in Tyler, Texas, our rose capital of America. And this is a city that is often considered in bloom. And for a while, Brandy was blooming right along with it. Her early life wasn't perfect as her biological parents weren't together. There isn't a ton of information on this, but her dad had moved on and had other children and another family, from what I understand. Brandy was raised by her mother, and her mother was with a man who considered himself very much her father because he really raised her a lot of her life. And because of this extended family, apparently, from the small amount online that I could gather, she had a good relationship with her biological father and his kids. And she also had a great relationship with her mom's husband, and her like current family. So lots of love in the family because she had a large extended family. Um, she also had a very close relationship with her godmother, Michelle Cole. Michelle was much more like a second mother than just a godparent. She was a really steady presence in Brandy's life, someone who was always there cheering her on through every up and down. In high school, Brandy, now I will say, I probably don't need to say this, but I'm going to say it. I wrote this episode a while ago, and I always like to go back and read through it again, just pop online, make sure that nothing new has come up since I've written it, make sure that I didn't miss anything. I did get a little bit more information on her background that when she was like younger, elementary school, middle school, she was really into religion, really into her church, things like that. But my research basically started when I wrote this, and we're going to stick with this around high school. So if you've heard this story and more details about her childhood and stuff, sometimes I just have to kind of executive decision how much we're going to include and how much not. So we're going to start with high school. She went to high school at Chapel Hill, and that's where she discovered one of her first passions, which was flag corps, is what they call it there. I came to understand that so I grew up in Chicago. It was called color guard where I grew up. Um, it's like twirling colorful flags with choreographed routines alongside the marching band, kind of. And Brandy loved it. She was obsessed and she was really good at it. So good, in fact, that eventually her dedication earned her a scholarship to the University of Texas at Dallas. And when she went to college, her college experience took kind of a left turn that no one was expecting when she fell in love and got married at just 19 years old. Unfortunately, the marriage only lasted about 2 years. There's not a ton of information on who this guy was or why it broke up. I did read that they had quite a few financial struggles, and that really negatively affected their relationship, which, of course, how did financial struggles negatively affect many relationships, I feel like. So that relationship ended in divorce after 2 years. After the divorce, Brandy moved to San Antonio in search of a fresh start, which is about 500 miles from her family in Tyler. So getting married caused her to drop out of school. So she met this guy, fell in love, got married, and decided to drop out of school. They needed more financial help, and so she started working, so on and so forth. So then divorce, moves to San Antonio for a fresh start. She was living with, at the time, a male friend, someone that she would eventually start dating. But the relationship really never had a chance to go anywhere because not long after they decided to start dating, he joined the military and he was deployed overseas. So with him gone, and the fact that Brandy's heart never really had left Tyler. Like she always, even though she went away to school and then moved to San Antonio, Tyler had still kind of always had a hold over her, and her family was there. So she eventually decided to return to Brownsboro, which is again just west of Tyler. She settled into an apartment with a roommate and wanted to rebuild her life. Now, Brandy was multi-talented. She was very musical. She could play the flute really beautifully. She had a beautiful singing voice, and she dreamed, like so many other Texas girls do, and boys, of becoming a country music star. But dreams take money sometimes to make them come true. And just life takes money. So dreaming about being a country music star with not making her any money. And Brandy was a pretty practical person. So after she moved back to the area, settled in, this is summer of 2006, she decided she wanted to go back to school and earn a teaching degree. Her scholarship had been reinstated and she was preparing to start. So this confuses me. I don't totally know. It's not super pertinent to the story. So we're going to kind of gloss over it. But I read that her scholarship was reinstated, but she was preparing to start at Trinity Valley Community College. So I don't know if it was required that she like went there first before then transferring back into where was she? UT Texas or University of Texas at Dallas. Perhaps that was the case. Um, she was also going to rejoin join Flag Corps, and she had picked up her old job. She used to work at Walmart, and so she picked up her old job there to make some extra money. And she felt like she was getting her life back. She was kind of getting her mojo back, going through dropping out of school and getting divorced. It took a toll on her, understandably. Um, but she was feeling good. She was feeling optimistic. She was close in proximity to her family again. And life was feeling like it was on the rise until one night in August 2006 that would kind of unravel everything. So it was Wednesday, August 2nd, a sticky, hot night in Texas. Brandy was settling into her new routine. And before school started again for her, she wanted to have one more kind of fun night out. So that evening, she drove from Brownsboro to her mom, Ellen's house in Tyler, about a 20-mile trip, apparently. But her mom didn't know she was coming. It was an unexpected for her to pop up, but her mom was very happy to see her. Brandy said she was going to go out for the night, maybe do a club. She had her younger sister, Georgia, was home. She wasn't feeling well, and was a junior in high school, so her sister wasn't going to go out clubbing with her anyways. But apparently, Brandy did ask her if she wanted to come. Georgia was like, "No, I'm not feeling well." Ellen remembers that around the house, Brandy was upbeat. She was trying on different clothes, doing her makeup, and she ultimately decided to wear a strapless floral top, rust-colored pants, and black-heeled sandals. Before she was getting ready to leave, she did a little twirl in front of her mom and said, "How do I look?" Her mom told her, "You look cute." But then Brandy realized she didn't have much gas in her car. So she asked her mom if she could borrow some money or she could borrow her mom's car. Unfortunately, her mom didn't have any cash and she wasn't willing to give Brandy her car to take. She said, "No, I need my car." So Brandy was like, "Well, maybe I have enough gas to make it to where I'm going. I'll just chance it." So around 8 p.m. that night, she left the house. She told her mom, "I'm meeting up with friends," but she didn't say who. Her mom assumed it was, some old high school friends, perhaps. And for one reason or another, Brandy's mom was under the impression that Brandy was headed to the Electric Cowboy, a popular country western club in Tyler, known for line dancing and being a little bit like rowdy, but pretty fun. And because that would make sense. Like Brandy didn't have a lot of gas. How far is she going to get? Probably not that far. So again, I'm not sure why, but her mom assumed she was going to the Electric Cowboy, but that was actually not Brandy's plan. Brandy's actual first stop of the night was at the 11th Frame Club, a bar inside Green Acres Bowl, a bowling alley in Tyler. She got there around 8:30 p.m. It was a very familiar spot for her. Her family had been there a bunch of times. Her mom even kept an open tab at the bar. That's how much they frequented it. So Brandy got there, sat down at the bar, ordered a cherry vodka sour, which I don't know what exactly that is, but it sounds like something I would like. She told the bartender, Jeanette, who she was friendly with and knew, to put it on her mom's tab. So Jeanette was a longtime friend of the family, knew lots of kids in the area in Tyler, and was kind of like the type of woman who was always looking out for all the neighborhood kids and teens that would come into the bowling alley and just were out and about around the town. So while Brandy and Jeanette were talking, Brandy revealed that she's not going to the Electric Cowboy, that she will be going to Graham Central Station, a much larger nightclub in Longview, about 40 minutes away, because it was ladies' night, which meant there was no cover charge. And she also revealed to Jeanette that she would be going alone. This immediately raised a red flag for Jeanette. The distance itself, the 40-minute drive by herself, and the fact that Brandy was low on gas just sounded like a really bad combination to Jeanette. And I can't disagree. It does. And it kind of reminded Jeanette immediately of a friend named Glenda Moorhead that had gone missing 18 years earlier from a bar in Tyler. Her car was later found abandoned, keys in the ignition, and a trail of blood near a single shoe near the car, and Glenda was never found. So Jeanette told Brandy the story and was like, maybe you should just go somewhere here in town. Maybe you shouldn't go all the way to Longview. Brandy brushed it off and said, like, I'm fine. I can take care of myself. She finished about half of her drink and then called her godmother, Michelle, to see if Michelle wanted to come along before Brandy headed out of Tyler and on her way to Longview. Michelle couldn't make it. So by 9 p.m., Brandy had hugged Jeanette, the bartender, goodbye and walked out the door, heading off into the night completely alone to Graham Central Station. So getting from Tyler to Longview, Brandy would need to head down Interstate 20. The stretch that she would have probably driven on was about like it's approximate, was 4 lanes and pretty, like it was in a pretty desolate area. There wasn't much around it. There was a lot of space between each of the exits and really not much else around other than oil fields and a few truck stops. And phone records, we know this from later on, but phone records later showed that while Brandy was driving on her way, so this is the route she was taking, and we know that from phone records, like I just said, she made 2 phone calls asking for directions. So this tells us she wasn't totally clear on where she was even going, let alone that she was low on gas. I'm a reckless person sometimes, often, I guess. And even I wouldn't do this. If I was like low on gas, didn't know gas stations, was traveling by myself alone, I don't know, 40 minutes at night, that would be dangerous to get stuck without gas on the side of the road in a desolate area. So maybe not a great decision, but that's the decision she made. So Thursday, August 3rd, we're at the next morning now. Brandy's mom, Ellen, woke up, started getting ready for work, and she noticed that Brandy wasn't there at her house, at her apartment. But this wasn't really cause for concern at this point because Brandy didn't live there. She didn't live with her mom. So she just assumed that Brandy had spent the night at a friend's house, or I guess, or she could have gone back to her own place. So her mom didn't really think anything of it, got ready, went to work, no big deal. Later in the day, Brandy's roommate called Brandy's mom, Ellen, though, and said Brandy was supposed to come home this afternoon, but she never showed up, and we haven't been able to reach her. So Ellen felt like a little flicker of concern. She got off the phone and began calling Brandy herself, but every time she called, it went straight to voicemail, which was odd. Brandy's phone was almost never off. But Ellen is doing her best at this point to stay logical. She's thinking, well, maybe Brandy stayed at a friend's house that I don't know. Like, obviously not her roommates, because that would be her house. So that wouldn't make sense. But maybe she stayed with friends and she just didn't bring her phone charger. So her phone died. That could happen. Ellen would later say, you don't think that she's disappeared. You think she's a 23-year-old and she'll just come home when she's ready. But now we're at Friday. So Brandy went out Wednesday night. No one has heard from her Thursday. Her mom has not been able to get a hold of her. And by Friday, now Ellen is really worried. No calls, no texts, no Brandy. Like no, not even a breadcrumb of activity, from calling her phone or from like the places she would usually hang out or the people that she would usually be around. Nothing. That's when Ellen decided to call the Tyler Police Department and report Brandy missing. She told them that Brandy was supposed to be at a club in Tyler, but Georgia, Brandy's younger sister, overheard this phone call and interrupted and said, "No, mom." She said she was going to Graham Central Station in Longview. Her mom said, "Okay," told the police that, got off the phone. Over the next hours and day or two, Ellen continued to call Tyler police for updates, but they didn't have any. So in the meantime, her and the rest of Brandy's family and roommates started making and distributing missing persons flyers. Then on Sunday, August 6th, Ellen called the police department again. She's called multiple times, hoping maybe something had finally come up or they had figured something out over the weekend. But instead, she was told that because Brandy had gone to Graham Central Station, the case actually had to be handled by the Longview Police Department, and Ellen would have to start over and file a new missing persons report, which I find super annoying. Why didn't they say that on the phone to her 2 days before? Like when she said she was going to Graham Central Station, or call her back and tell, like 2 days have gone by. She could have filed the police report with Longview on Friday, but because Tyler police didn't tell her that, now 2 days have gone by and really nothing has been done. And this is just going to be like the first of many seeming missteps by law enforcement with this case. So Ellen did this. She called Longview Police Department, filed a new missing persons report. The case was assigned to Sergeant Darren Lair, who admitted that like he didn't think much of it at first. He said, on its face, the report itself appeared to be fairly generic report that we get pretty regularly. Daughter came to Longview, was going to a nightclub, hasn't come home yet. Nothing's jumping out here as there's a problem here. Basically, Longview PD was like, she's 23, she's an adult, she'll come home when she's ready. Which to me is just like, ugh, how many times do we have to have this situation happen where it's like being 18 or older than 18, like being an adult, doesn't mean that you're immune to danger. You know, it's it's very frustrating that's why not assume danger first and then find out that they're fine and be relieved rather than assume everything's fine and then find out it's actually not. It seems very backwards to me. And Brandy's godmother agreed with the sentiment I just had that why are we just going to assume she's fine? Like, let's not assume she's fine and let's look for her. So Michelle, the godmother, remembered that Brandy was low on gas and she thought, well, maybe her car broke down and something happened. So Michelle drove to Longview herself, like scanned the route, went into parking lots, back roads, a ravine, even went like into a ravine near the club and like was searching through the woods there. No sign of Brandy. Oh, sorry. The pause is because as I'm reading this, it just drew a question up in my head, but I can't say it yet, so I'll bring it up later. Uh, she didn't see any sign of Brandy. So, and back in Tyler, Brandy's mom is just sitting by the phone waiting for an update. Little do either of them know that Brandy's car had already been discovered. Turns out that on Thursday morning, so we're like at Sunday, Monday now. Thursday morning was days in the past. But Thursday morning around 9 a.m., just hours after Brandy presumably at this point disappeared, a local police officer had spotted a black 2000 Pontiac Grand Prix on the side of Interstate 20 just outside of Longview. It was partially pulled off into the grass on the side, and the driver's door was ajar. And it didn't really look, it was described as not looking like somebody had actually purposefully parked it on the side of the road. Like it looked like somebody had kind of like, if you had run out of gas, you would roll off into the side of whatever road you're on. The officer initially assumed it was a stolen vehicle, but when the license plate didn't match any recent theft reports, he simply tagged it as an abandoned vehicle and moved on. And it sat there day after day until 6 days later, when a concerned passerby called and said, "Hey, this car has been on the side of the road for days and it looks weird. Like the door's open. There's just something weird about it." Which in my head, I'm thinking the police officer marked it as abandoned and he didn't shut the driver's side door that was like ajar. That seems odd to me, but okay. So only then, 6 days after Brandy's gone missing, so we're at Tuesday, August 8th, did police connect the dots that this abandoned Grand Prix matched Brandy's car. So they got the crime scene unit out there to go through Brandy's car looking for evidence, dusting for fingerprints, looking for any kind of fibers or signs of foul play. Sergeant Lair said, "We're looking for hair lifts, fiber lifts, latent prints, fluid. Is there anything in the car that lets us know what was going on in that car when it stopped?" And the whole scene was just kind of strange, though. So the driver's seat was pushed all the way back, like as far back as it goes, like for someone who's, very tall, well over 6 feet. Brandy was 4'11", so she was barely 5 feet tall. She definitely didn't do that. Her purse was in the back seat with her wallet and ID still inside. She didn't have any cash. There was no cash in there, and she apparently didn't have any credit cards. So it didn't seem like anything had necessarily been stolen out of the wallet. It was just there. On the passenger seat, I believe, a napkin with a man's name and phone number was sitting there. They found a cell phone in the car, and they found a gas can. I saw both that it was in the trunk and that it was on the floor behind the driver's seat, but an empty gas can. They also found a partial thumbprint on the driver's side window, but that print, initially, at least, it wasn't matched to anybody. Brandy didn't have a record, so they didn't have her fingerprints. Couldn't rule out that it was hers, but they also couldn't attach it. They couldn't attach it to anybody, basically. What was weird is not that print, but that there were no prints found inside the vehicle, which is not. I mean, it was August in Texas. Nobody's wearing gloves. It's not winter, so and even then, I don't know how often people listening clean their cars. I guess I don't. I'm not a good example. I don't clean my car that often. There would be a billion fingerprints in my car from me and any other person who's been in there for like the past 6 months because I haven't wiped it down, which is gross now that I'm saying that out loud. However, I think for most people to find zero fingerprints in someone's car, it's very odd. So police were thinking, okay, this all does seem a little weird, but like there's a cell phone here, there's a purse with a wallet here. Nothing seems like it was probably stolen. So maybe whoever was driving this car, presumably Brandy, ran out of gas. So they added gas to the car, apparently, without even checking if it was empty. Again, a lot of the stuff I'm going to say, like when I was researching this, I was like, this can't be correct. Like I must have read this wrong. No, it's just, I mean, apologies, but shitty police work. So they didn't check to see if the gas in the car, if there was any. They just assumed like, well, it looks like this car kind of like rolled off, must have run out of gas. We're just going to fill it up with gas and then we'll start it. But the original key was missing, so the car's anti-theft system wouldn't allow it to start. So this kind of derailed the like gas theory. And the gas can, Brandy didn't own one. The family had never seen it before, said she never carried a gas can, empty, full, nothing in her car. They were like, that's not hers for sure. It was just there. They had no idea where it came from or why. Now, we also have to keep in mind the car's been sitting there for 6 days. So a lot of this stuff, like the seat being pushed all the way back, maybe somebody saw the car and was like, sweet, I'm going to hotwire it and drive off in it. And they couldn't. And so they left the seat. But, unfortunately, because it was there for 6 days, we we really can't take anything that's happening in the car as concrete evidence because we have no idea who has messed with this car in those 6 days. However, after finding the car, the police did seem to take the case more seriously. They brought in cadaver dogs to search the tree line in the area around where the car had been found. But it had rained heavily in the days since Brandy had disappeared. So any scent trail of her was long gone. Now, the car's location, we're going to talk more about this later, but it also raised some questions. It was about 30 minutes from Brandy's mom's house. It seemed like it was heading in that direction, back towards Tyler or Brownsboro, but the route didn't make sense. Apparently, it was found on a stretch of highway that wasn't the typical path that Brandy would have taken home from Graham Central Station. So, not only is the scene at the car, like the seat pushed all the way back, the fact that her stuff seems to all still be in there, this all seems really weird. But the location of the car, it doesn't. And again, this is hard for me to understand because I have not been here. But basically, it was in a place that didn't make sense for her to be coming home from the nightclub that she went to, supposedly. So we don't know. This is like a mystery wrapped up in a riddle topped off with an empty gas can, and we have no answers at this point. Now, here we go with another kind of what the fuck were police thinking here situation. 10 days into the search, so she's been missing for 10 days now, police finally showed the cell phone that they found in the car to Brandy's mom. And Brandy's mom immediately said, that's not Brandy's cell phone. That's her ex-boyfriend's cell phone, who was deployed in Iraq at the time. So he wasn't even in the country. No one has any idea why his cell phone was there. I mean, the fact that Brandy had his cell phone, I guess, maybe I guess, didn't bring it with him overseas. Maybe he got a new one and he left the old one. Maybe it had been in the car for months and Brandy didn't even know it. There's really nobody knows at this point. But what we do know is that by waiting 10 days to ask Brandy's mom if this was her phone, they wasted so much time because they spent 10 days calling people in that phone who didn't even know who Brandy was, which you would think would like set off alarm bells in their head. 10 days, you're calling all of these contacts, and most of them were like, yeah, I don't know a Brandy, or like that name doesn't ring a bell, or like, oh yeah, I think what's his name used to date her. Blows my mind that they wouldn't, like, after the first day of calling contacts and people don't know who she is, be like, huh, that's weird. Are we sure this is her phone? Again, wasted a lot of time on this. Now, on August 10th, about 8 days after she vanished, her actual cell phone apparently came back to life, came online. At 11:23 p.m. on August 10th, a call was made, and then another and another. And over the next 24 hours, more than 30 additional calls were placed, mostly to and between a man and his niece. Police to a man and his niece, but they were being made from Brandy's phone. So police traced all of this activity to a third man who was making these calls, apparently, or receiving some of them. This part is pretty unclear. We're going to call this man Phone Guy. Police got a hold of him. He claimed, and I don't know, I shouldn't point this out, but like, and I don't know how. If he claimed he had been walking in South Longview, this Phone Guy, when he heard a beeping noise coming from the sidewalk near a park called Stamper Park, which is apparently a pretty sketchy area. Now, this Stamper Park, this area where phone guy says he found a phone just on the sidewalk, about 7 miles from where Brandy's car was found, 10-minute drive, and about 3 miles south of Graham Central Station, 8-minute drive. Phone guy says that he heard this beeping, looked down, saw a cell phone, picked it up, and just started using it, which maybe at first doesn't sound that weird, but that's really weird. I find a cell phone on the ground out in the world, and amazingly, it's still working. And I just pick it up and start calling people from it. Like, that's just really odd, I think. He was asked to take a polygraph by the FBI. He refused. Now, all of that is weird to me, but let's pause here and examine this. We're talking about a flip phone in East Texas in mid-August. There has been lots of rain, not just rain, but like major thunderstorms. Very, very hot. No phone could survive lying on the sidewalk. First of all, no phone would have battery left after a week of lying on the sidewalk. Not a flip phone from 2006. Not even my phone today would. So that's weird. And definitely a flip phone from 2006 wouldn't survive thunderstorms, rain, and like high 80s, 90s, 100-degree heat. Again, my phone today wouldn't survive that. So the only way this phone is still working 8, 9 days after Brandy's gone missing is if it had been kept inside and plugged in, which is exactly what must have happened. Like, that's the only explanation. Police already know that's what's happened. Like, this guy is lying for sure. His story doesn't track. Police know it. He knows it. But apparently, there's nothing they can do about it. So let's talk about some of the other weird things we found at her car. The napkin found inside her car, the one that was just sitting on the seat with the man's name and phone number scrawled on it. Okay, police called it, of course, and a man answered. He said he met Brandy at Graham Central Station that night. He offered to buy her a drink. She declined. They chatted for a little bit, and at some point, Brandy had asked him for gas money, which he did not give her. As they said their goodbyes, she asked for his number. He gave it to her, and that was it. He was pretty helpful, this guy. Like, he seemed a little too helpful, investigators thought. He was like almost overly cooperative, overly forthcoming. But at the same time, he didn't really seem to be hiding anything. His story was reasonable, and they couldn't find anything aside from him seeming too helpful, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. They couldn't find anything suspicious about him otherwise. And his name never really came up again. So he was not considered a suspect, and he kind of just faded into the background. All right. So 2006, there's got to be surveillance footage somewhere, right? There is. So Graham Central Station was surprisingly well equipped with surveillance equipment for 2006. They had inside and outside security cameras, and they required every guest to swipe their driver's license through like an electronic swiper before they entered the club. So the initial footage that police and detectives were looking at showed a woman that resembled Brandy outside the bar at 10:40 p.m., chatting with two men before heading inside. Her ID, Brandy's ID, was scanned at 10:44 p.m. She's later seen buying drinks, and the outfit looks really similar to Brandy, but it is 2006. And even though Graham Central Station is equipped with lots of cameras, they're not good cameras. The video quality is like truly abysmal. black and white, very low resolution, and the lighting is so bad that it like inverts the colors. So a white shirt might appear black. You know what I mean? It's like watching a crime scene through like a microwave window, microwave door window. Still, investigators were like, it's better than nothing. We're going to release this footage and hope that someone would recognize one of these two men that she was talking with. So, 6 weeks after Brandy vanished, her family revisited the footage, the surveillance footage from the Graham Central Station Club. And her uncle, rewatching everything, noticed something strange, that the timestamp was off by about 9 to 10 minutes. And at first I didn't really understand this. So this is how I understand it. If you're listening to this and you're like, no, you're totally wrong, please correct me. But the way I was like, the timestamp is off by 9 to 10 minutes. Okay, but how would they like what are they comparing this to? And so what I was thinking is that they're comparing this to the card scanner. You know how they scan their licenses, every person who goes in. So that's what I was thinking, like allowed them to really confirm this discrepancy at least. So the timestamp was offered by 9 to 10 minutes, which meant that the woman that they initially thought was Brandy on this footage talking to those two men outside of the club wasn't actually Brandy at all. But a few frames later, there she was entering the club alone. At 10:35 p.m. about is when they get her like walking up to the club by herself, wearing the same thing that she had left her mom's house in, which like even I guess I'd have to see the footage to know like how terrible it is because I understand the colors, like inverting the colors and stuff, but she was wearing a floral patterned top and high heel. Like, I don't know. But I mean, who am I to say? I didn't see this footage. Obviously, they thought the other woman was her. It wasn't. Now they see her. Her ID scan is confirmed at 10:44. Unfortunately, this mistake though cost them valuable time once again, similar to with the cell phone where they're, you know, calling all these people that this isn't even Brandy's phone. Well, now they were looking at this woman trying to find these two men that she was talking to. That wasn't even Brandy. Brandy wasn't even talking to these two men. So again, time wasted. Now, as Brandy exits the club later that night, around 12:29 a.m., so she checks into the club 10:44, leaves at 12:29. The camera catches another person walking out just behind her, a man in a white cowboy hat. Now, at first, it looks like they're not together. But then there's something very small but crucial that happens in this tape, and her shadow kind of shifts, moving left as if she's turning to follow the man. So he was behind her, but then shifts. He moves in front, and it looks like she's following him. And the man in the cowboy hat, you can see that he's kind of pointing and gesturing like he's directing her somewhere, but all of this is happening like just slightly out of the frame. So it's a little bit of inference and a lot of like paying attention to every little detail, every shadow, everything that you're seeing on this surveillance footage. The body language seems pretty clear, though. She did not walk away from the club alone. She followed him. And here's where things get extremely frustrating. I mean, I can't even imagine being Brandy's family. The club had a full list of ID scans for every single person who entered the club. So theoretically, we should assume it would be very easy to find out who this man in the cowboy hat is, right? I mean, they scanned his ID, they scanned every single person's ID, yet police never publicly identified him, and it's actually completely unclear if he was ever even questioned, if he was ever even identified at all. He was never publicly identified, but we don't even know if he was identified at all or questioned, brought into this in any way, shape, or form. Just giant question mark there, which I'm not even, I will keep my thoughts to myself for right now. So let's go over this again. Brandy doesn't leave alone. She follows cowboy hat guy out of the club. So she entered Graham Central Station at 10:44. She leaves at 12:29, seeming to follow this cowboy hat guy. Her phone later turns up 3 miles south of this club. Her car is found 7 miles west of that. And the stretch that her car is found on I-20 is apparently not even the normal way that she would take to get back home to Tyler or Brownsboro. Again, we also know that since her purse with her ID, her wallet, the napkin were found in the car, not at the club, we know that she must have gotten back into her car that night. So, because if she'd been taken from the parking lot, somebody's not going to take her purse with her wallet and stuff and put it in her car. I mean, maybe to throw people off, but unlikely. And if you're going to take her, if she's abducted, if you're taking her from the parking lot, why would you move her car at all? Why not just like leave her car there? Unless they were trying to stage the scene. Or maybe she left with Cowboy Hat Man. Maybe he got into her car. Maybe he didn't have a car there. And they drove south. Maybe something happened, some type of disagreement, and somehow her phone got thrown out of the car. And then the car drove 7 miles west. And that's where the giant question mark remains. Because she never made it home. So what happened? For weeks, well, we're weeks and weeks into this. So for more weeks, the case stalled. The car, the napkin, the phone, these are all pieces in this puzzle that has really no clear picture. And then a little over 2 months after she vanished, a new case exploded onto the scene. Case that was so eerily close, both geographically and symbolically, that Brandy's family couldn't help but wonder, could these two cases be related? Could Brandy be related to this case? So on October 29th, 2006, police in Gregg County received a chilling call that a woman's body was found burning in an East Texas oil field. It was just 7 miles from where Brandy's car had been abandoned. The victim was unfortunately unrecognizable due to fire damage, seemed to be wearing blue jeans and a lavender sweater, and was found face down, engulfed in flames. And next to the body was a gas can. Investigators are fearing the worst, that this is Brandy. But it is not. Dental records confirmed that the woman was not Brandy Wells, but they could not at this point identify the burned woman. So they decided to call her Lavender Doe until they could identify her. Now, Brandy's case makes almost no movement after this. In 2010, about 4 years after Brandy has vanished with no leads, no suspects, no nothing, Brandy's mom, Ellen, gets a call. The man's voice on the other end says, Brandy is alive. She's living in Kansas City. And then he hung up. No name, no proof, no explanation. Just seemingly somebody trying to like rip the scab off of this awful wound that probably hasn't even scabbed over yet for Brandy's mom, if it ever would. Police believed it was a hoax. But Ellen, Brandy's mom, she didn't. And she really never forgot this because it gave her that hope. Even though it never seemingly went anywhere, it still gave her that twinge of hope that maybe Brandy's alive. Again, years go by without any advances on this case until 2019. With the help of the DNA Doe Project, Lavender Doe was finally identified as Dana Dodd, a 21-year-old blonde woman from Florida who'd been traveling across the country with a door-to-door sales crew. She had been strangled and set on fire. The man responsible was a 28-year-old man named Joseph Wayne Burnett, who had a 1996 sexual assault conviction under his belt, a record of failing to register as a sex offender, and a second murder charge involving a woman named Felicia Pearson, another 28-year-old woman that he had strangled in Longview, Texas in 2019. He confessed to both murders, that of Lavender Doe and Felicia Pearson, and pled guilty in 2020. During the time of Brandy's disappearance, however, this Joseph Wayne Burnett was a free man living in East Texas. And this just felt really too close for comfort for a lot of the investigators and for Brandy's family, because Dana Dodd's body, which was Lavender Doe originally, was found 7 miles from where Brandy's car was discovered. She was burned with a gas can. A gas can was found in Brandy's car that wasn't hers. Burnett was living in the area at the time and had already assaulted and murdered, presumably murdered other women. There's no public record confirming whether Burnett was ever formally connected to or even looked at in connection to Brandy's case. But it strikes me as very strange that investigators wouldn't at least look at this as a possibility. I mean, Brandy disappeared in August 2006. Dana is murdered in October 2006. And then Felicia is murdered many years later in 2019. But all in the same area, the gas can. Is it a slam dunk? No. But how could they not investigate it further? But they didn't. So let's just review what we have. A missing woman, a staged car, seemingly staged car, a phone that magically survived the Texas storms and heat, a mystery cowboy that was never identified as far as we know, and a convicted killer just miles away from where Brandy was when she disappeared. And still no answers. It's been decades and there is no trace of Brandy, no confirmed sightings, no arrests, and no closure. Just a stalled investigation, a big list of what ifs, and a family that is forever caught in the space between hope and heartbreak. Brandy Wells was last seen August 2nd, 2006 at Graham Central Station in Longview, Texas. Age 23, height 4'11", wearing a strapless floral top, rust-colored pants, and black-heeled sandals, driving a black 2000 Pontiac Grand Prix. Her case remains open. And if you have any information about the disappearance of Brandy Wells, please contact the Longview Police Department at 903-237-1110. The disappearance of Brandy Wells isn't just a cold case. It's a haunting pause in the middle of a life that was just getting started. A life of music, education, community, and big dreams. A young woman trying to do everything right, only to become another name in a file cabinet of silence. But that's why I'm sharing this case, because who knows? Maybe someone out there knows something. Maybe Cowboy Hat Guy listens to this podcast. Maybe Phone Guy listens to this podcast and has decided he wants to share something. You never know. So my thoughts and prayers go out to Brandy's family, friends, and here's hoping that maybe someone somewhere hears something that triggers a memory that could bring some type of closure to this very, very tragic story. That is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining me on Death by Southwest. And if you're loving Death by Southwest, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, come say hi on Patreon, Instagram, wherever. We're on all the places, all the things. All of our handles are DeathXSouthwest. You can email deathxsouthwest@gmail.com. Our voicemail line is below in the show notes. And as always, stay curious, stay safe, and stay out of the desert after dark. I'll be back next week with more true crime here on Death by Southwest. Thanks for listening, guys. Love you all so much. Goodbye.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, good night and good luck.